Hey everyone, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. As always, I am Justin, and this is
It is always Derek.
Always. Are you sure?
95% sure.
Fair enough.
Well, we need to make sure we thank our two patrons, Jan, and we still haven't been corrected, but I'm thinking it's probably Luciana, and not Luciana, but haven't been corrected yet. I don't know if you saw, I did message both of them on Patreon just to kind of get their history with reading, and that type of thing, and how they stumbled across us, just to get in touch with them a little bit and find out a little bit more about them. So that was cool. If you haven't seen that, then you should check out those two messages. But thank you two, both of you. Love having you.
Yes, thank you very much. I did see those messages. Ironically, this
Did ya?
morning. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that's amazing. I like getting to know our patrons. So
Yeah, again, especially, I mean, we've got, we got one on the same hemisphere, just south of us a long ways.
Mhm.
But yeah, it still blows my mind that we're making friends all around the world doing this. So it's really cool.
It is cool. Yeah, it is amazing. Maybe we'll have to take some vacations in these areas.
I would not be against that.
Nope, not at all. But yes, thank you to all who have supported us so far. And we are ever nearing our 1 year anniversary. So yeah, we're hoping to get over 5,000 plays on Anchor. I see that we are currently at 4.9K. So I would imagine we need 100 more listens.
Yeah, just and the support that you're talking about, it doesn't just have to be Anchor. It's just, I mean,
Anywhere.
the fact that people listen to us, it's cool. I wouldn't have. I feel like we're successful. I didn't know what kind of measurements we would have to be what we would consider successful, but I think we're doing it, man. I think we're there.
I think so too. It's nice to see. It is really nice to see an episode on, the majority of our platforms reach near 100 plays within 5 or 6, 7 days. So that's absolutely amazing. And I can't begin to summarize how I feel of all of the support and, working with you. So it's been absolutely amazing. And I can't wait. Can't wait to keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, dude, how have you been? How you doing?
Good. It's Sunday and the weekend's gone by too fast, but it's been a pretty decent weekend, so can't complain. How about you?
That's fair. It's been the weekend definitely has gone by. Thankfully though, I have President's Day off tomorrow, so I get another day before I have to go back to the grind. Not to rub it in your face or anything.
Our kids have school still.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
No, the kids don't have school tomorrow.
Must be that private school money.
They don't go to private school.
Isn't Blake a private school?
Well, yeah, my work, but even my children don't have school.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, it must be a Twin Cities thing.
It might be. I don't know. I'm not complaining.
All us rednecks down here in southern Minnesota, apparently.
Yeah, you and your big fucking southern trucks.
Yeah.
Dude. You also had kind of a little bit of some bummer news.
Definitely some bummer news. Yeah. You got your books from HC, The Curse of the Fallen.
Correct, and Forbidden Realms.
And I've been excited to get those. I mean, even just from your pictures, they look beautiful. So I sent HC a message saying you got yours, and she messaged me back shortly after and said mine were apparently stolen, which sucks a lot because she got an empty box back. I don't know if I showed you that picture or not.
No, you did. Yeah, you did.
I did. Okay. And then like a dumbass, I posted that on Twitter and somebody's like, hey, you should take that down because your addresses are there. So
yeah, or at least just like cross them off.
I didn't think about that. But yeah, apparently somebody must have been a mail worker, because HC said it never left Nashville. I don't know how close she lives to Nashville, but I know she lives somewhere in Tennessee. But yeah, they sliced open the side of the package and took the books out and then taped it back up, and it got sent back to her. So I hope whoever did this wasn't like, oh, it's books, fuck these things, and threw them in the trash. I hope they learn to love them and read them like they should be. But she's been great, and she's gonna get another set out. I feel bad because I think, she probably only ordered enough for the people that had, I guess, I don't know, pre-order is the right word, but ordered the collector's editions like you and I, right?
Right.
So now she's probably got to go through and order just like another 2. So I feel bad about that she has to do that, but what do you do? I mean, this is not something you're going to count on, but it is what it is, and I'll get them eventually.
This is true. It just, my guess, seeing the type of box that they were in, I would assume that they probably thought that it was like a computer, and it, based on the books that I received, they're personalized, which I think is great. So what is this person going to do with 2 books that are personalized to Derek? I mean, yeah. I guess I would just keep an eye on online. Hopefully they were smart enough to at least like see that it was signed, and the fact that it had a number out of 100. So my guess is that she only intended to make 100 of them,
Right.
Yeah. So I would imagine, as popularity grows for this series, for these books, really, that I don't know what I'm trying to say here. The rarity of these books, and it's just crazy to think that 2 of them were stolen because they were that person decided to be an asshole.
Yeah, and I did. That was a good idea you had when you and I were talking about it. But I did mention that to her, and I think it's probably more likely they probably just ended up in the garbage, when it wasn't what the person was expecting. But
Right.
If they show up somewhere, on Facebook or whatever, she said at least she could, flag them as stolen or whatever. So beyond that, I guess I don't expect that. It's probably unlikely she'll be able to recover them, but I mean, I guess you never know.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, there's ways to track things, like the fact that she knows what number out of 100 was taken is going to be, I would imagine, definitive enough evidence to know that, yeah, these were taken. I'm the author. My name is on the fucking book. These were not delivered to the person they were supposed to be delivered to, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I would just keep an eye on online. I would imagine in the next couple of months, there might be one up there.
Yeah, that's just it though. I mean, do you think she wrote down like, okay, Justin, you got, well, I think you said you got like 58, right, out of 100?
Right.
Do you think she wrote down everybody's name and what number they got? I don't know. Maybe she did.
I mean, based on the fact that I received 2 58s, I would imagine that, yes, they were assigned per person.
Oh, that was gonna be my next question. I was wondering if they were both 58 or not.
Yes,
so that's cool.
They're both 58 out of 100. So
nice.
Yeah, but yeah, dude, I felt so bad. I was just like, what? I feel like that never happens, and then just the shit, dude.
I know, because it was weird. Because I sent her the picture that you sent me of the box that you got them, and then like I didn't close out of that message, and then when I went back into Twitter later, she had sent a couple messages, and the first thing I saw was the picture of the box that had been returned to her, and I'm like what happened here? And then I saw she had sent messages prior to that. She's like, I think your books got stolen. I was like, oh, so. Yeah, it's a whole thing, and people suck sometimes. So I just through talking with her, best case scenario is she got a new fan out of it. So, but glass half full.
That's true. Yeah. And one that would maybe listen to our podcast about the book. So, but I mean, it makes an interesting story, right? So,
it does.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess outside of that, from a shitty situation, what do you say we get to Chapter 10 of Deadhouse Gates here?
Fuck yes, dude. Like, yeah. This, as the kids say, this chapter slapped, and I fucking hate that saying.
Why do you hate the saying slapped?
Because I just think it's really dumb.
I mean,
Maybe just I'm turning into a cranky old man, I guess.
would you rather they say the bomb?
I could live with that.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that that's worse or better than slapped.
No, dude,
Oh,
this chapter literally was the bomb at one point.
yeah, yeah. Which we could talk about, but there was an epigraph a couple of chapters ago that I felt would have related very well with this chapter. However, this chapter's epigraph I feel like is much more impactful, and we could talk about it when that time comes.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess do you want me to do the epigraph or would you like to?
Up to you, man. I'm
I'll
fine
take
either
it.
way.
I'll take it.
All
I
right.
feel like I always do. I always make you do the epigraph. So,
That's fine. You can take it.
all right. All right. So, chapter 10 epigraph here is it is one thing to lead by example with half a dozen soldiers at your back. It is wholly another with 10,000. And that was written by Duiker on the life of Jasim Ultor.
Oh yeah. Speaking of that, I want to before I forget about it. Our friend Evan and friend of the show Evan. He messaged me and I think I sent it to you, but apparently we've been saying Duiker wrong and it's I guess Diker, but I don't think I can change. Gonna stick with Duiker. If we get the chance to talk to Mr. Erickson, I guess we could ask him then, and then it's straight from the horse's mouth, and then I guess then I'd have to come correct at that point. But for now, I can't change my headcanon, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I don't think I can either, but you know me, I'm always trying to like say it the right way.
I know, but we've been saying it this way for like fucking half this book, and so now I just like that's what it is to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you as far as like the headcanon thing. I'm not, it's hard for me to like switch that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, should we get into this slapped of its chapter here?
I'm gonna slap you with a pie sometime soon.
I don't think so.
Take it away, man.
All right. First section here. These first two are very, very lengthy. So I will just get the obligational grab your blankets, grab your pajamas, start a fire, and grab some s'mores and rest in a little beanbag chair here as we unroll. But it had been a week since Duiker had come upon the trail left by the Karen Tepsi refugees. They had been moving south and placed further strain on Coltane and his mobile city. The dry season had come, the sun-scorched grasses from high in the sky. For days, Duiker was not able to catch up to the fist and the train. The few times he had gotten close, Rouleau and his Tisani outriders prevented him from getting closer. The debris left by the refugees diminished. However, the things that were left behind had felt sadder. In contrast to what was left behind, the skirmishes that Duiker had come across told a completely different story. Everything that could be used was stripped from the Tisani bodies. Duiker was well past astonished with anything he saw. Based on the words he had exchanged with other Tisani tribesmen, Duiker himself had begun to believe that Coltane and his troops were something other than human. Yet, this didn't assure victory, and quite the opposite. Thomas Rouleau had 4 cities, a dozen towns, countless tribes, and a peasant horde as vast as the sea. It was closing in on Coltane, damn near escorting it to the Sakala River. A battle was taking shape. Duiker rode through the day, hungry and parched. Tisani riders knew of him and paid him little heed, outside of a wave here and there. Every few days a troop would bring him victuals for himself and his horse. Dusk approached. He had been leading his horse by foot. As the horse was wearing down, he needed it for one last push. When Duiker was certain that the train had reached the river, he hopped in a saddle and made a break for the camp. He figured he was about a league away. Duiker pushed his mount to go faster. Voices to his left were discouraging him and that he was headed for enemy lines. Duiker reached the top of a low hill. Below he saw two encampments. The one on the right was the Tisani Lancers, and to his left was the peasant army. Between the two encampments was a corridor, and through that led to Coltane's defense on the other side of the floodplain. Duiker bolted through this corridor. Heads turned at the sound of the hooves, and alarms shouts were heard. He heard horses in pursuit and gaining. He cursed as he saw bows rise from behind the pickets of Coltane's encampment. He yells at them to not shoot him. The bows loosed anyway, and screams were heard behind him. He glanced behind to see that the Tisani retreat to get out of arrow range. He slowed the mare to a canter and rode into the midst of the blue-skinned Wiccans, or the Weasel Clan. Beyond the Weasel Clan's encampment were military tents and two banners. One he recognized as the Hisari Guard, who had remained loyal to Coltane, and one he didn't recognize. Hands reached up and pulled Duiker down from the horse. They were more concerned with the horse than they were of Duiker. An officer approached and explained to Duiker that he was seen riding the saddle like a Malazan, but dressed like a Dosai? Duiker reveals that he's the Malazan historian. The officer is surprised to hear how long Duiker had been following them. Lull introduces himself as captain of the Sialk Marines and tells the historian that Coltane has called a meeting. As they made their way through the encampment, Duiker noted some appalling observations. Duiker questions Lull about why he wasn't with Admiral Nock. Lull explains that they stopped in Sialk for boat repairs the day the uprising began. He led the exodus from Sialk. Coltane and the Crow clan were in a farmhouse on the south side of the Ford Road. Duiker and the captain stepped inside. They say they saw Bolt and two of the 7th officers. Lull has some questions about what the two officers were doing. When one of the officers turned, he saw the historian and instantly recognized him. This causes Bolt to turn around and acknowledge Duiker and to explain that Sormo had been right. Sormo had sniffed Duiker on their trail for the past couple of weeks now. Bolt then just extends his welcome to Duiker. Sitting down, Duiker tells Bolt that it was good to see him. Lull asks when the fist is going to arrive, as he can't wait to hear what crazy plan has been cooked up. Duiker blurts out that it's worked so far. Bolt continues to explain that when they faced one army, currently they face two. Or Bolt explains that was when they faced one army, but currently they face two. The one captain that Duiker recognized, and vice versa, introduces himself as Chened, and introduces the other captain next to him as Solmar. Duiker asks if they are the last of the 7th captains. One captain says that they unfortunately are, while the other says that they are not, as there's the captain of the sappers. The two kind of converse about the sapper captain never being around and how they assume that he thinks that he's just better than everyone. The door thumped open and Coltane entered the room. Behind him, Sormoinath and a half-dozen Wiccan youths. Coltane addressed the group. He asked for a report from Chened. Chened explains details about the crossing. Coltane explains that the Foolish Dog clan will guard the other side of the ford. He swings to Lull and explains that he and the Weasel clan will stay on this side and guard while the wounded and refugees cross. Solmar clears his throat and explains that the Council of Nobles have concerned about the order of crossing. Coltane says, well, fuck them, and reaffirms the order of crossing. Captain Solmar again tries to sway the fist. A debate surrounding the nobles and crossing order ensues. Coltane curses and cuts them off, and then silence follows. The door opened and two men entered. The one who spoke first was named Nethpara, and he relayed the disdain that some of the nobles had for the order of crossing. After a conversation about Nethpara's stance on the situation, the talking ends, all waiting in anticipation for Coltane's reply. Coltane finally tells Bolt to find the sappers, as the wagons cross within the hour. Another rebuttal is explained by Nathpara. Coltane says that he's had enough and tells him to get out. The other noble speaks up and explains that Nathpara speaks for the majority, but it is not all that agree with this mindset. Tumlet cuts right to the chase by asking what is exactly being planned here. Bolt begins to explain the plan, and shortly into that explanation, Bolt is cut off by Tumlet, who lists off observations of his own. Coltane tells Bolt to get them out of there. Chened explains his concerns about the depth of the river and the weight of the crossing. Coltane doesn't respond the way that they wanted. Coltane tells them that they know their positions and tasks. They will each get a warlock and all communication will be through them. Everyone left except for Coltane, Bolt, and Sormo. Sormo magically had a cup in his hands and passed it around. Coltane addressed Duiker. Coltane asks about Culp and if he was dead. Duiker explains that he doesn't know as they were separated. The historian asks if Sormo has searched for him in his warren. The warlock explains that he's tried, but the warrens have become difficult. Duiker is confused by this, and Sormo recalls the ritual that the historian had witnessed. The plague of Deivers and Soul Taken, they infest every warren, at least on this continent. Sormo explains that he is forced to the old ways, the spirits of the land. This ability is not known to R'hllor, which makes him very predictable. Duiker was staring down Coltane, and when he caught the fist's attention, he asked where the fist was heading this train. Ubard is Coltane's response. Duiker asks if the city is still held by Malazan forces. Silence ensues. Duiker is surprised that no one knows if it's held or not. Coltane puts a kibosh on that conversation and asks Duiker about his story and journey. Duiker explains a loosely based story, close enough to the truth. As he spoke, the sound of wagons lurching into motion could be heard, likely heard by R'hllor and the uprising as well. Duiker couldn't help but wonder what R'hllor would do. Coltane tells Bolt to find the historian a bedroll, give him 2 hours of sleep, and then have him woken up so he could witness this crossing.
Nice job, man.
Thanks, dude.
Duiker finally catches up to Coltane here, and it was a good opening to the chapter, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It was nice to see that happening because, when you first start reading this section, you're like, oh, God, he's still trailing him, but it was nice. It was nice to see. Him catch up. I was wondering when that was going to happen. And it almost feels like Duiker has been following them for a long time, which I don't know. I guess that's cool. I like the fact that it has taken some time for him to catch up, but on the same time, to a reader, it feels like it took a long time. But then again, we read these chapters every week. So that could be part of that too.
Yeah. It really brings home the sense of exhaustion that Coltane and every, like his mobile city. I think that was a great way to put it. His mobile city. I don't even know if these people are running on fumes. I don't know how they're just not dropping dead from exhaustion at this point.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I think that it's just in the present situation that they're going about, Coltane is doing everything the right way. And I mean, just, going back to what Duiker saw, I think it's funny that at the beginning of the section, Duiker kind of comes across two realities. He sees the things that are being left behind by this mobile city, and they almost kind of seem like the unneeded stuff. Like if you had, this is going to be an extreme example, but if you had a dresser of drawers that was handed down to you for 5 generations, in a situation like this, that's not needed, like that would just get dumped. So I'm getting a sense that what Duiker is coming across are objects that maybe would have held some value to someone. And that's why, even though the amount of things being left behind were, less frequent, they were a lot more touching items. if that makes sense.
I get the sense that, like, yeah, whatever was left behind didn't serve a purpose, right? Like you
Right.
said, like a dresser. Like, we don't need something to put our clothes in. Like, we need food, and we need tents, and we need blankets and shit to keep us warm, and that
Yeah.
type of thing.
We need
Like,
stuff to build up our defenses. Yeah.
we're on the fucking run here, boys.
Yeah. But then on the opposite side of that, these what were explained as small skirmishes with the Tisani tribesmen, literally anything that could have been taken was. Like, they even cut their hair. They like took their locks of hair. So you could just imagine these like terribly haircutted dead people naked, right? And just you're like, what the fuck? So it just goes to show how resourceful Coltane is being. And I know that some of that bleeds on like a little bit of brutality, but I couldn't have thought of a better picture myself.
It feels hopeless, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. It feels vapid. It just feels empty. It feels right. Like all of everything is against you, and all you can do is with what you have, and sometimes you have to take what you need, and you're going to get it in any way that you can. I just equate it to like when I need to do a project around the house, but I don't have the right tools for it. I am just coming up with a workaround. It may not be that they have rope, and I'm assuming that's why they're cutting the Tisani hair, is to make some type of rope out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Yeah. You get enough hair, you can make a long rope.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you take the hair off of everybody you kill, you could probably make some cool shit.
Yeah. Can I say one thing before you get into your talking points here?
Yeah.
So I did not pick this up when I read the chapter, but you mentioned that, what was it? The Weasel Clan, they were blue?
Yep.
Do you think they just paint themselves blue, or do you think they're blue like Lacine?
Ooh. Oh.
Do you think she came from like these people?
You think that she's like a Wiccan?
I don't know. I like I said, I don't remember picking that up when I read it. And then as you were reading your summary there, it just like blue people like got to be kind of rare, or like I can't believe there's like tons of people that are just blue skinned.
But isn't Lacine Nethpari or something? I feel like in the prologue of Gardens of the Moon, Ganos was just like, "Oh, I can speak that language because I learned about it at homeschool or whatever."
I guess I don't remember.
Yeah.
It just stuck out to me when you were reading your summary there.
I'm thinking that they probably paint themselves blue.
Like a war paint type situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with. But I guess you could be right. I mean, Surly could help blue too.
I wasn't sure if it was like a war paint thing. But I mean, given the situation, that makes sense too.
I think it's a war paint thing. But that would be cool if Lucine was a Wiccan. That would maybe explain why she had mercy on Coltane.
Could be.
Yeah, it very well could be. The other thing that I thought was cool was as Duiker was riding, Tisani riders knew of him, and they just kind of associated and assumed that he was just some old man riding to the battle, so they would help him out. They would wave at him, like hello, and then they would give him, like food. And they're kind of responsible for his survival, and
they definitely played a part. Yeah,
right. And it's just interesting that in this moment, Duiker he feels guilty, and I guess I can understand and I can empathize where he's coming from, right? Like, to the enemy, he looks like them, and so they're helping him out, but that's not his intentions. These are just purely a means to an end. Like, his goal is to catch up to Coltane, and I guess I could see that mental juggling between, I guess, two moralities, but it definitely, Coltane and catching up to the mobile city is Duiker's number one goal, and that's going to outweigh anything.
Yeah, for sure.
it just goes to show who Duiker is. And I'm really enjoying his character.
Yeah, he's been I mean, I can't really think of a character I haven't enjoyed in this book.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But even
I
the
mean,
last book, I feel like there really wasn't that many characters that like we didn't. Well, I suppose you didn't really care for Lorne too much.
no, yeah. And I'm not talking about like minor characters and stuff, but like from the major characters, like I'm definitely enjoying all of them.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I mean, we kind of already talked about exhaustion a little bit, but just one of the big things that immediately as Duiker arrives is the Weasel clan. Duiker kind of sees that they're pale. They look pretty pale. They look exhausted, and instead of saying they are exhausted, he uses descriptive characteristics to bring in that sense of exhaustion. I just thought that was clever. And I mean, I can only imagine they're in this type desert scape with probably with limited resources for water, food, and probably not a lot of shade. There's probably not big, huge trees growing out in the desert.
No, but now they're at this river, so there's probably like some, I guess.
Like a little cool breeze, some grassy areas. Yeah.
But even as we see, though, I mean, when they stop, it's not like they're resting. They got to build defenses. They got to fucking dig ditches and pointy sticks to, point out. So, and if, the enemy charges, they get impaled. Like,
yeah.
Maybe you're not running, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, their backs are against a river. So, I mean, there's planning around that too, which we get a sense of because we get this whole conversation about an order of crossing, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not just a free for all.
And I think that it's cool how Coltane in this section is still kind of vague about things, but you still kind of get a sense of the order of crossing, right? Like you picked up on that.
Yeah.
Cool. So, and this is what the nobles are bitching about, essentially, is they think that they should go before the wounded and the wagons. So they're being selfish.
Yeah, I remember that. We're like, oh, who's gonna make our food? Who's gonna start a fire? Who's gonna put up our tents? Like, dude, You know what? You could stay at the fucking end and fucking die because you're worthless.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But I also kind of look at like, okay, so from an author's perspective, why would he put that in here?
Just, I guess, just to show, I mean, I don't mean class in the way of like they're being classy, just like, I'm not sure the word, class privilege. Sure. Yeah. These guys are accustomed to getting their way and now they're not.
Right. But I think it's funny that I mean, are they just in complete denial of their situation? Or is it because of the situation that is making them use their talents of privilege, I guess?
I wouldn't call it a talent.
No, it's not. But, you know what I mean? Like that learned manipulation there. That's maybe a better way to put it.
Like, are they maybe they don't realize there's an army on the other side of the river and they don't want to be like the last ones, getting caught up with the horde.
I didn't even think of that perspective. Coltane I just think at the end of the day, he just doesn't have time for bullshit. He's literally got everything to take into consideration.
Yeah. That was just something I kind of thought of now. That I didn't think of that at the time reading this. So just as bouncing ideas off of you, talking to you, it's just kind of what I came up with.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, I think that this podcast is very additive like that. I mean, we both have our own kind of headcanon around what we've read. And when we come together and we have these conversations, things just kind of, as we're talking about it, like, oh yeah, which I think is just the beautiful thing. And I really hope that extends to our viewers too, or our listeners, excuse me.
It is fun to bounce ideas off you and have things meld and mesh.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool phenomena.
Another point of view is, this wouldn't be nearly as fun as if just one of us was reading this and talking about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was interesting with Tomblet, which is the noble that he doesn't seem to agree with the majority of the nobles, but he
Yeah,
makes,
he
sorry, go
was
ahead.
reasonable. I was just say he was the reasonable one.
Yeah, he just had questions. And these are all based on observations about how somehow they ended up having more wagons than before, even after small skirmishes. And he questions then, why are they so heavy? Why have the sappers been all over everything? And I think that this observation from Tomblet the Noble, I think is some great foreshadowing to events to come. And it's crazy because in the moment, this makes no sense. But it's important that the sappers kind of kept getting brought up throughout the section. I don't know if you ever caught that.
I was wondering, like, I had thoughts that they must be using the wagons for something, and I thought they were gonna. The only thing I could think of was that they were gonna use the wagons as like bombs, basically, something like that. That was where my head was going because I just didn't know what else where things could have gone, and so that's the only thing I could think of. Like,
Well,
okay,
see,
well they're heavy. They must have a bunch of fucking like dynamite on them or something.
yeah. My thought is that they were carrying materials and the wounded. So I think that they were killing two birds with one stone. Is that they were bringing over all of the materials that they need, as well as the wounded.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but again, I could be right, it could be wrong, I could be misinterpreting something there. But yeah, I just get the sense that Coltane, he's doing the best that he can, and I think that he's fucking crushing it. And he's just going to where he knows best, right? Like, I know that Duiker brings up where they're headed, and nobody knows if the city has been like taken back or if they were able to defend it. And it just kind of seems, it just adds on to that hopelessness, right? You're in the middle of the desert, you're doing the best you can to, thwart advances from behind and, wherever they're coming from. But then you have no idea as to your destination is even a refuge for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like an oasis, I guess. I mean, you're just hoping that it's going to be there.
Yeah, it's just crazy the sense of scale that you get just within this first section. Like, for example, Duiker, 3 months he had been trailing them for 3 months, and to just think about that, like we've been doing this book for almost 3 months, maybe no, a little over, right? So just to think about that, and just to get like 3 months, can you imagine yourself out in the desert with no way of knowing where your next meal or drink is coming from for 3 months?
Yeah, it would suck.
Like, how do you form the will to keep moving on?
Oh, it's either that or you give up and die.
I know, but I mean, in a situation like this, it's just like, when does one take that option? What is the straw that breaks the camel's back?
It would be, I feel like it would be easy to give up, but you have a leader in Coltane who, I mean, he's obviously not at that point yet. So I feel like people just kind of rally around that. They see, okay, well, this guy's our leader and he's not giving in yet. So we gotta keep on keeping on.
And you, sir, just led me right back into this chapter's epigraph. Do you see how maybe that could maybe perpetuate some loyalty?
Yeah.
Which is awfully similar to what else or who else?
Not sure what you're going after here.
Dujek. He commands loyalty from his like followers, not followers, but his army, right? Which makes Lacine apprehensive because Dujek commands loyalty, but was also operated under Kellenved. So now Coltane is having a very similar path. So what events are maybe going to make Lacine look differently at Coltane now that he's got all this loyalty? Do you think that, like Dujek, she will attempt to take his life?
I don't even know how you would. I mean, he doesn't seem like. How do you try to kill him? Because he just seems like he's insane.
They were unsuccessful with Dujek, with Tayshran at Pale. I mean, I don't know. I see similarity. I see similar storylines there. And that I think the epigraph in this chapter tells us that Coltane commands loyalty. And you get a sense of that in a later section too, which I'll point out. Yeah, just kind of where my thoughts were.
Gotcha. I think it's a good thought.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks. I hope I don't have bad thoughts.
I don't think you do.
I don't know, you and your underwear, man.
I mean, it's all in perspective. It could be a good thought.
Well, I think this is one of those things where bad is good.
There you go.
But yeah, anyway, I guess the only other thing that I can think of is back when Duiker first enters Coltane's camp, he recognizes two banners, or he sees two banners, and he recognizes one of them, but he doesn't recognize the other one. And it's like a stylized crossbow at the center, generally signifying Malazan Marines. But this can't be the Red Blades, right?
I didn't think so. I thought the Marines and the Red Blades were separate.
Right. So do you think it's just as simple as that? They're Malazan Marines, or do you think that like maybe it's someone that we will eventually come across? Or is this really just one of those small things that really don't matter? I think it's interesting that that was put in there, though. You know, I immediately thought it was the Red Blades.
I did not have that same feeling.
Yeah, I feel like Duiker would have known that.
I probably, yeah.
So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I don't know where that leads to or what that is, or if it's just simply that they're Malazan Marines. But I thought it was interesting to put that in there.
I think it just gives it more like personality almost. You just know their sigil.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, like, okay, now I'm really thinking about it, and maybe this is just a tangent that doesn't need to happen, but Duiker is the imperial historian. He should know these banners, right? Am I wrong in thinking that?
I don't think you're wrong in that, but also, I mean, remember, he's been traveling for 3 months. He's just as exhausted as everybody else. I mean, he's probably not in the best place mentally, and it'd be easy to forget that. I mean, how many sigils do you think there are? There's probably a few, so to not remember a specific one, I don't think is a huge thing.
Fair enough. Good point. I like it. Cool.
Let me just rain on your parade here.
No, it's cool. I do that to you too. Especially, I felt bad when you asked when you were like, my dad has a theory about The Last of Us, and I just come in there and I'm like, nope.
No, that's fine. He wasn't like, he's like, oh, I didn't remember that, and that's all it was. He's like, okay, so it wasn't a big deal. He wasn't hurt about it.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, I felt a little bad. I'm like, I'm squishing his dreams.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I didn't remember that she got bit a second time either. So.
Oh, I feel like it was pretty subtle. It was pretty subtle in the show. So
I guess spoilers there for anybody who is not current on The Last of Us.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, my bad. Oh, we try so hard to be a spoiler-free show. I would imagine that people who have watched that show at least have made it through the second episode.
Dude, can I just say, not playing the games, only watching the show, every episode has been amazing on this show. Like, I love Game of Thrones. I love Wheel of Time, but this, like, every episode has been so fucking good. Like, I don't know if I've seen a better TV show than The Last of Us.
Damn. It is good. It is good. And man, I should just loan you my PS3 and then go buy The Last of Us copy on PS3 for like $10 and just have you play it. It's awesome, dude. It is so good. It's so good.
Maybe we could do that. I don't play many video games. I'm still playing Skyrim. That's like the most current game I've been playing.
It's okay. I mean, I'm playing a 10-year-old Uncharted 4 game, multiplayer, really. And then Hitman 3, which came out 2 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. I played through God of War Ragnarok. I beat that one already. So yeah, but
a fun little tangent.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess pertaining to the first section, I thought it was very good establishing current events. I feel like it's progressing things further. I definitely can feel things on the horizon, but I didn't have any other comments. I don't know if you did or not.
No, I don't think so. Like my only, I guess, comment was just kind of what I thought after listening to you talk about the blue there. So that was about it.
All right, man. Well, I guess take her away.
All right, we're gonna give you the short section, short version of section 2. So if you've seen Boondock Saints, this will make sense, and I'll do my best Willem Dafoe impression. But there was a firefight.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's the show. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
All right, goodbye, everybody. No, I'm just kidding.
Just kidding. All right, so the long version, and man, this was a doozy. Holy crap. But it was a lot of fun to read, so I will try to do it some justice here. But there was a lot to this. So all right, here we go. Duiker is awoken from sleep in a chair he fell asleep in. He asked the corporal for his name. It was Corporal List, the one who died a bunch in the war games. As he came to, he heard noises and asked if the battle had already started. List said it was only livestock crossing the river. However, there had been some engagements on the other side of the river. The Goran army had shown up, but so far they held the line. Duiker asked for Coltane. He forgot to tell him something last night. List said he rode with the Crow clan, and it was almost dawn. Duiker thought this wasn't good. Dawn? And the cattle are only starting to cross? He asked if List had been tasked with him today. He said yes. Duiker said he needed to know where the shitter was, and it was full. He also told List to stop calling him sir and to find him a rider. The soldiers on the other side of the river were in some serious shit. List didn't know what he was talking about. Duiker said he heard from some Tithansi outriders that the Semk had made their way south. They have sorcerers, and the Tithansi have some fear of them, so they must be badass. Some riders came by. List intercepted them, and Duiker recognized them immediately. It was Baria Citral, the commander of the Red Blades. Duiker said it looked like his luck had held. Baria had made the same comment in reply and asked if the rumors of the Semp came from him. Duiker said it was the Tithansi. Mesker asked if he shared a tent on the way, and that this was clearly a lie. Duiker disagreed and said there was no point to lie. Baria said they rode to assist the 7th advanced picket, and they'd pass along the warning. Mesker said it was a trap. Baria quickly told him to shut up. It's not a trap. If the Semp show up, then they are prepared. If not, they lose nothing by it. The Red Blades rode off, and Duiker noticed the dust cloud that seemed to hang and hold above the Sakala River. He said that was a nice touch. List said that was Sormo's work, and some said he had awakened the spirits of the land, that sometimes you could almost smell them. Like when you turn a rock over, that musty smell. Duiker asked Duiker asked how strong the spirits were. According to List, Sormo said they were pleased and eager to play. Duiker's reply was that a spirits game was a man's nightmare, and he hoped they took their place seriously. He returned his attention to the mass of refugees and asked who was in charge of them. List told him that some elements of the Crow clan were because they were scared of the Wiccans as they were of the soldiers of the apocalypse. List pointed to the troops. Duiker had ridden through last night. They were on the move. Infantry on the right, lancers on the left, and horse warriors down the middle. The mounted fighters moved in on the Weasel clan's defenses. Mounted bowmen and lancers rode out to meet them, but it was a feint. The Hisari and the Tithansi turned away rather than engage, but they were in range of the Wiccan arrows, and some riders fell. The Wiccan lancers darted out, covered by the bowmen, and finished off any wounded, some even scalping them and taking their equipment, dragging away dead horses. List said that the Wiccans fed themselves, and they'll use everything. Duiker didn't need to hear more. He got the idea. All the while, the infantry continued their slow and steady march. List said there was an old wall on an island where they could have a better view of everything. They would just have to walk across the backs of cattle to get there. Duiker told them to lead the way. As they made their way, Duiker asked where this herd came from. List told him that they were mostly bought. Coltane said the clans had laid claim to land outside Hisar, and then started buying just about anything that had 4 legs. List said this all took place the day they arrived, and when the uprising came, most of the foolish dog clan was with the herd. The Tithansi thought they were getting some easy livestock. Instead, they wound up with a bloody nose. A young girl showed up. maybe 9 or 10 years old. List knew her. Her name was Nether. She said she would clear a path to the wall for them. She looked at Duiker and said there was aspected magic on the other side. A lone god's warren. Not soul taken or diver, but a tribe's god. Duiker said Semk, and the Red Blades carried that info. As he spoke, he realized this was one of the reborn warlocks. Nether said she was on her way to face it, and the spirit of the land is older than any god. Nether cried out, and a pathway opened between the animals. Nether walked through, and List and Duiker followed. They could feel the earth tremble beneath their feet, and it wasn't the hooves of the animals. Duiker thought it was as if the land had awakened and was eager to show its power. They arrived at the wall, and Nether kept riding, not even looking back at them. List said to look to the south. Coltane and some of his clan were fighting. The village of Leanbarl lay that direction. They hadn't seen the Sea Out cavalry yet, so it was likely Rouleau sent them around to try and take the flank. Coltane predicted this, as Rouleau was predictable. Duiker looked north. On a plateau, there was an army. List said it was Rouleau and his hand-picked elites, though he had yet to use them. Back to the east, the fighting continued, and the infantry continued its steady march towards the line. Duiker said if they charge, they're fucked. Liz said they will charge, but if they are lucky, they'll wait, and there will be room so the Malazans can fall back. Duiker replied that was the kind of risk Hood loved. Liz told him that the ground they walked whispered fear, and they wouldn't be moving for a while. Duiker wasn't sure if he actually saw control on all sides, or if it was just the illusion of control. Liz said sometimes they're one and the same, and according to Coltane, when you bloody the real thing, it absorbs the damage while the other simply shatters. Duiker was impressed. He asked List if Coltane had made him his protege. Liz said, well, he died a lot in the war game, so he had a lot of time to listen and absorb wisdom. They looked back to the herd crossing the river. Duiker thought they were crossing too quickly for the depth and width of the river. List said nothing. They heard a clash of thunder and saw smoke rise up to the sky. Duiker knew it was the Semk wizards, and a single child opposed them. Irritated, he said this is taking too long. How and why did it take all night to get the wagons across? Night will fall before the refugees even begin to cross. List responded. He said they were closing. The infantry had made contact with the outer defenses. Watching things appear to fall apart, Duiker said it was over. List said not to count them out yet, and he was as bad as Rouleau. Duiker didn't understand. List only reminded him that this wasn't their first fight. Something was happening down there. Duiker could not see clearly, but the Tethansi archers were screaming and thrashing about. Duiker asked what was happening. List told him that Sormo had promised a thirsty spirit one last day of warm blood before it ceased being. List spoke up again, saying that was the last of them. Duiker thought he meant the archers, but it was the herd that he had meant. The refugees had begun to cross the river, and it was chaos. There was no order among the 30,000 people trying to cross the river. List said that they needed to move. Duiker asked to where, and List said to the east, where the Weasel clan covered the Marines and other infantry as they fell back. Duiker thought they were falling back too quickly. List said they would hold the bridge. There was no other choice. They had to. As they made their way, the land trembled beneath them, splitting open, and broken skeletal shapes climbed out of the earth. What Duiker heard froze his soul. It was laughter. List gasped and said Nil, Nether's twin brother, and that this place had seen battle before. The refugees screamed in terror as things rose among them. Though the Weasel clan had formed a sturdy line, it shifted to let the undead through, their laughter turning into a battle chant. Nil rode his horse up and down the line, urging the undead on. The boy also laughing as the warriors saluted him. Rouleau's veteran infantry broke and fell back into the mass of soldiers behind them as they had stopped their own advance. Duiker didn't understand. Liz said maybe they weren't truly undead, and that maybe the island's spirit is only using them. Duiker disagreed. He asked List if he could hear their language. Their souls had remained and were awakened, never released to Hood, and that every one of them would pay for this. More were rising from the ground, women, children, and dogs. Duiker wondered how long ago this happened. How long ago had they been trapped and prayed for their release as he watched women stab the children? Duiker had a feeling that Nil could see more of what was happening than he let on. Duiker asked what he could see. Who kills them? Trembling, Nil said it was kin. The clan had fractured, and it was family against family. Duiker couldn't believe it. He thought it must have been someone else, Jaghut or otherwise. Duiker was in disbelief, and all he could do was mutter no. Nil again said kin. This had been mirrored among the Wick a generation ago. Mirrored. Duiker pleaded that this would go on no longer. Nil said it was no longer, and that the Emperor, as their enemy, had united them. Laughing and sneering at their pointless feuds, he shamed them with contempt. When he met with Coltaine, the alliance was already breaking. Kelvin balked it, and said they would only need to watch the rebellion end. His words branded their souls. His words, an offer of unity, bestowed wisdom. With his words, they knelt before him with gratitude and accepted what was offered and gave the Emperor their loyalty. This is how he won their hearts. The skeletal bodies and rusted weapons fell and could not withstand living. Duiker asked if they needed to go through this defeat a second time. Nil only shrugged and said they purchased a spell to breathe again, and that should they have won the first time, they would have done to their victims as to what was done to their families. Shaking his head, Nil said there was little good in people. Duiker replied, saying good can be found, and it's more precious because of its rarity. Nil said there would be none found here. We are known only by our madness, and that they were not finished yet. Though it was around noon, Duiker thought it was much later than that. List told him they needed to find horses if they wanted to survive. The defensive line was managing to hold, but it moved like a snake. Mixed units of the Weasel clan rode to support wherever it was about to collapse. Nil commanded them and seemed to be able to sense where they would be needed. On the north, Rouleau had moved his elite forces into play. Duiker looked to the south, wondering where Coltaine was, and thinking that if he didn't disengage from the battle in the village soon, they would be trapped on that side of the river. Nil seemed to be thinking the same thing as he kept looking that direction. Duiker realized that he was in communication with the warlocks with Coltaine. List returned with Duiker's horse, which seemed to be well rested and full of life again. He thought to himself that he wished he felt the same. The rear guard had been giving up ground fast, and Rouleau's heavy infantry was minutes away from hitting the north flank. Duiker told List it wasn't looking good. He did not respond. Weasel clan riders strode through with wounded. He noticed they did look like demons with the blood spattered on their faces among their tattoos. List said they needed to move now. The rear guard was disintegrating, the line buckling. Within a few minutes they would be encircled and slaughtered. He saw Captain Lowell trying to organize the few standing soldiers remaining into a battle square. For some reason, the attacking infantry paused, only moments away from complete victory. Lowell said the last of the refugees were in the water, and they had to ride. Duiker needed to know where Coltaine was. Nil said it didn't matter. They weren't waiting, and to ride. They rode for the river with the peasant army chasing them. Duiker thought they would end up fighting in the river as the last of the refugees still crossed. The river would run red, he thought. Duiker had a different idea. They'd ride on the south bank of the river and swim their horses across. Otherwise, they rode for death. List called after him, and Duiker told him to ride or die there. As he rode, he thought if Coltaine made it out of the village, the smart thing would be to head to the river. A few hundred drowning would be better than thousands dead trying to retake this side of the ford. At that moment, Coltaine appeared, doing exactly the opposite of what Duiker was thinking. They were mounting a charge, and it was coming straight to Duiker. He and List had no choice but to turn and join the charge. The charge would hit the flank of the peasant army, like a knife plunging into the side of a whale. This was suicide. Just before they made contact, the Weasel clan returned out of the dust cloud on horseback. It was another counterattack. This was all madness as far as Duiker was concerned. What started out as a knife plunge turned into a saber slash. The peasant army could not withstand the attack and melted away. Duiker thought for all the bravery in this charge, the river still lay ahead. Wounded, soldiers, refugees, and Hood knew what else lay. But as they approached, he could tell the water was not 4 feet deep, but half that, and his horse hooves struck solid surface, not the soft river bottom. He didn't understand. List appeared next to him and called it Coltaine's Road. Then it came to him. The engineers made a road. It seemed impossible, but yet it was not. He thought the battle was not over yet. They had outrun one army only to meet another head-on. All this to be crushed between two rocks. As they made it all the way across, there was a squad of engineers running towards the road, yelling at them to clear out as they had work to do. Duiker turned to see what was going on. The dust cloud was gone, and he could see Coltaine's road full of peasant soldiers. One of the engineers told the other to wait. They needed to maximize. At the right moment, the engineer told his partner to yank the hair. Nothing happened immediately. He turned to look at the sapper who had a finger in each ear. The ground suddenly dropped about an inch around them, and the water in the river heaved up and submerged the road. Anyone on the road just vanished, only to reappear a moment later as bits and pieces flew in all directions. The river came back to normal, only with bodies everywhere. The sapper said the ford is now a trench. List asked Duiker where they were going next. He said to the Malay they would see this through to the end. The arrival of Coltane and his clan on this side of the river had turned the tide of the battle, and for the most part his forces were intact. Duiker wanted to get closer to the action. List said they would be in bow range, but Duiker was willing to take the risk. They rode towards the 7th Army. They approached a standard stuck in the ground, and 3 veterans were there with a fallen friend. They recognized Duiker as the historian and had seen him before. Duiker says it looked like they put up a good fight defending the flag. They said they didn't fight for some cloth on a stick. Their friend had taken 2 arrows. They fought off the Semp because they captured the wounded and tortured them. They weren't letting that happen to their friend. Duiker paused a moment and asked if that's how they wanted the story told. One spoke up and said, just like that. They ain't a Malazan army anymore. They're Coltanes. Duiker said, but he's a fist. The man replied that he's a cold-blooded lizard, and he's all theirs. As Duiker watched the battle fall apart for the Apocalypse soldiers, he knew it wasn't the Whirlwind's day.
Very well done, sir.
Whew. It was a lot of fun. And it was, man, that was a hell of a battle. I know we got a pretty good battle in Gardens of the Moon early on, but not on the scale of this. And even like this, to me, I mean, you're kind of getting like the big picture of the battle, right? You're not on the front line seeing, some guy stab another guy so much. That stuff's happening. That's going on.
Right.
With the horrors of war, but it's just, I was kind of amazed how it felt like Duiker was the center of this battle, just looking out over everything, taking everything in, like everything all at once almost.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the headcanon I got too.
But it definitely, just the ferocity and the tenaciousness. There's another word, I can't think of the other word I'm looking for, but just the Malazans, man, they need a win here. And
yeah,
they're taking losses too. It's not like none of their guys are dying, but they're not packing it in. They're not just giving up. Maybe they're gonna all get killed out. Maybe they'll all die later on here in the book. But I mean, they're making them pay for it. They're earning it.
Right. But I think it helps that the D'Ivers and Soul Taken are pretty much like muddling up every Warren. So therefore, no one wants to see them here. So Rouleau's not going to open his Warren. And like that I think is part of the turning point. And the fact that Rouleau is so predictable, Yeah. I think those 2 combinations make Coltane have a very successful, what I would imagine, withdrawal, or crossing of these rivers or river.
They're advancing backwards.
Right. Well, or would it be forward? Was they came down, I guess they were moving northwest, so they would be on the east side of the river, and then they would need to cross to the west side where the Sempt and the Garan are coming down to meet them on that side. Right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. I don't remember who said it, but it was just there was something, I don't know if it was a movie in real life or what it was, but somebody said we're not retreating, we're advancing backwards. So that was kind of
yeah. No, absolutely. That term is would work very well here. I guess, and we kind of discussed this a little bit earlier, but I understand everything that happened, but for me, it's the details. And with battles like this, and in any book, I have a hard time understanding where these different pieces of this battle are taking place on like a map. Like, I think it would be really cool if in books that have battles, if there was a map for that particular battle, and there were just like different sections laid out on the geography of where everything is taking place. Because the thing that threw me off about reading this particular section is, from what I understand, there's a river that's essentially being diverted by, an island of some kind. So there's now two parts of the river going in different parts to the geography, which means there are two fords technically, right? And where I'm getting lost is it doesn't really differentiate between which ford. Now, I'm assuming that's just the reader needs to understand. I'm assuming everything is happening on the east ford, and then as they cross, blah blah blah, that's when they would go across the second one as well towards the end of the section. So it's just maybe overthinking it has caused my problem, but I mean I guess that's how I make sense of things, if that even makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you. I guess for me though, I guess I don't so much worry about the direction of things. It's just like, okay, they're trying to cross the river.
Right. Yeah.
And if they don't, they're dead. And even if they do, maybe they're still going to be dead.
No,
yeah,
that's fair. Maybe I just need to start looking at it in more simplistic terms, but this is the thing that I've struggled with my whole life is I have a hard time thinking of things simply.
Well, I'm just a dumb hockey player whose coach preached KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And you got the college education, so even though that, well, I don't want to diminish your degree.
No, it's okay. It was from a defunct private school that basically got sued for being an asshole.
Yeah, they did you dirty for sure.
They did.
So, but they came out in a way I totally didn't mean, so I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. It's fine. I take no offense. It's just part of my identity. I really love details. And as, an artist, this is why I don't do graphic design, because designs, logos, they're meant to be simple. They're meant to evoke emotion in a very simple way. And that's just something that I unfortunately don't have the ability to do. And that's okay, because I like details. That's who I am. But sometimes I do wish that I could live more simply.
The details do matter for sure. I guess just like me reading this, it was just like, okay, we got a river, we got to get across it. You got a shitload of people and animals to get across it. And how do you do that in the best way possible? So I guess that's why I'm not a battle commander. I'd just be probably some guy with a spear on the front lines trying to stay alive.
So then I guess in your head canon, right? So if you're thinking of just a single river that's not even parting, right? Like, where does the Oxbow Island come in for your head canon? Like, how do you fit that in there? Do you just assume it's like an island in the middle of a river?
That's kind of what I thought. Yeah. And, like we were talking before we started recording. Yeah. I almost envisioned like a sandbar, almost like I guess a big one, kind of like a halfway point or something. And, we've been told this river is 4 feet deep. So, I mean, think about trying to cross that. I mean, for you and I, that's probably like chest deep, right?
Yeah.
Like that's going to be pretty slow going to get through that. It's not going to be easy, and you got a bunch of people. So it's a bad deal. It's a choke point.
Right. Bottleneck.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to hold the other army back while you're trying to get everybody across, and you're severely outnumbered. Man, it just seems unlikely it's going to work.
Right. And do you see where when I was talking about that engineer epigraph from a couple of chapters ago, that would have fit very nicely in this chapter, right?
Oh, how they're the like bread and butter of the army or whatever. I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was something like that.
I mean, think about where they would be without these engineers, right? They would be, as you listed out beautifully previously, they would be, people like children, right? They would be treading water. They would need help across. Animals and livestock would be help across. So you make up a very valid point that, swimming through 4.5 feet of water is going to take an awfully slow time.
Yeah. So I was not expecting them to have built a road. I was really surprised by that. But it was really cool because, like, holy shit, Like, because like I said, I was thinking they were turning these wagons into bombs, and they were just gonna, kind of what ended up happening, where they blew the road up with, it full of people. But that was kind of what I thought was gonna happen with the wagons, not with this road that was built.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently it was with 55 cussers. Like they had used 55 cussers, and I'm assuming hair from the Tisani as the charge, right?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
See, that's why I brought that up in the whole taking of
Oh,
hair.
nice. And they did say pull that hair, so that makes sense.
And I believe they made like a rope guardrail on the side of, right? Like, am I interpreting that right? They had made,
Yeah, that wasn't anything I brought up, but yeah, there was definitely that detail where they
yeah.
made kind of like a guide rope almost.
So I thought that was cool, and again, just kind of reaffirms, some of the things that Duiker was seeing in these small skirmishes before he met up with Coltane's encampment. It's just going back to the detail thing. Like this is the shit that like I like, and I appreciate you dumbing it down for me so that I can understand. And I totally get. I'm just gonna try to just think of it in a more simplistic way. I'm assuming there's more battles to be had, so I'll get another opportunity there. But just even the way that you wrote out this section made so much more sense. It kind of brought things and filled in a lot of those holes that I had. So I appreciate that. I thought very well done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's so many things that we could talk about in this section. What do you say about, so you remember how in the first section in the first section, and I didn't summarize this at all, is that Duiker does try to explain about what he observed of the enemy, like what he ended up telling the Red Blades in the section. And Coltane cuts him off because it's during that part at the end of that section where Coltane is asking about, Duiker's story or his journey there. But essentially Coltane interrupts Duiker, and instead of like fighting back, he was modest and just ends up telling Coltane about his story. So I thought that was kind of a cool little thing.
Yeah, just like you said, I mean, there's just so much in this, even though I guess I didn't have a ton in this, but there's definitely some neat tidbits.
Yeah. Do you want to get into some of those tidbits? Because I think that's where we could probably head anyway.
Sure. My first thought just reading this was, they talk about Coltane and the clans claiming land outside Hisar, and then they're buying up all these animals, which I get, like that makes sense, but at the same time, it didn't make sense because all you're doing is just forking over money to the enemy to, they can hire people to make more weapons or whatever, So I thought that was a little weird. Why wouldn't they just steal these animals or kill the people and take them?
Isn't that what they did?
I guess I got the impression that they bought them, that they bought the animals.
Yeah, but wasn't there something mentioned about like they made them bleed or something like that?
Oh, well, when the uprising started, yeah, they thought the Hisari thought they were going to get all these animals back, but the foolish dogs were there. Makes me think of like Ale clans, right?
Yeah,
clan.
gotcha.
But yeah, they punched him in the face basically. I'm sure some of them died, but I feel like they took out more of the apocalypse soldiers than what they lost. They weren't expecting any resistance.
Gotcha. So basically, after anything with four legs was purchased, the Hisari and the Tusani tribes wanted them back, and the
after the
man was like,
uprising happened. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Weird. Okay, that makes so much more sense. I like that. But going back to your point as to why just give them all this money to line the enemy's pockets, right? Well, if you die from starvation, how useful are you at using these weapons that you just bought?
Yeah, that's true. I wonder why they paid for them though,
instead of just taking them.
Yeah.
I mean, why? I don't know. I guess why bring more attention to yourself than needed, right? Like word's got to get out that there's some rogue clan out there stealing anything with 4 legs, right? Like that's going to cause some attention, which you don't want your enemies to have a head start. You don't want enemies already out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Me just thinking off the top of my head, these are things that are definitely not mentioned in the book. There's no elaboration to these things, but I think it's an interesting, and it all adds up to, kind of what ends up being a battle for survival on top of, and not just survival, like I'm not going to die because someone killed me, but the added pressure of making sure that everyday items you have to survive so that you can fight the enemy, it's just really cool how those nuances ended up in here that just end up adding to the story, which is just fucking amazing. I love it.
Yeah, this chapter as a whole, like, again, the last chapter we covered was great, but things just seem to keep, one-upping the last one.
Yeah, almost kind of like a slow build, even though they don't relate to each other really, or maybe they do.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, definitely intense. I know that when I was reading this chapter, I had the feeling of like being on the edge of my seat,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Another thought I had, I don't know if this was the first time they mentioned how many people were fleeing, but see, you got 30,000 refugees trying to cross this river.
Yep.
Why the fuck aren't you like conscripting some of these people into the army to fight back? Maybe you can't take all of them, but surely you have to have some extra weapons and armor and shit. Like why aren't you using these people to try to, bolster your numbers a little bit to fight back?
I mean, you bring up a good point, but I think the issue is with this is I don't think they have any extra items because they've been on their heels ever since the uprising, right? Like the Hisari and Kamist R'lo broke into their fortifications while they were sleeping, but yet Coltane and the Seventh were able to exit while battling everybody and taking in refugees. So I think that they just didn't have the time to go back and loot or scavenge or collect things that they may have needed, which I think is why they are so resourceful with everything they come across, is my best guess.
But sometimes you just need bodies. Like, have you seen the movie Enemy at the Gates?
Yep.
Like all I could think of was like when the one with the rifle falls, the one with the bullet picks up the rifle. Like,
yeah.
Like, man, it's dark, but like
you just need bodies.
You just need bodies. So you got 30,000 of them.
Yeah, right.
Plus whatever soldiers you have, I guess. It sounds like even if all 30,000 of these men, women, and children were fighting, they're still going to be outnumbered. But and maybe it resorts to that at some point. Maybe they're just going to have to be like, you know what, guys, we're fucked. We're gonna go in there with rocks and sticks and see what happens.
Yeah, but it can't be any different than what I would imagine would be the peasant army that Kamist R'lo has, right? Like,
yeah, like I imagine they got like fucking pitchforks and shit.
Right, yeah, just any day items that they have found, sticks, stones, right?
Like a butcher knife, something.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, yeah, that's a good question.
My next thought, these souls that were awakened and were never released to Hood. Duiker really seemed like bothered about that, right? Like he said, we're all gonna pay for this. What does he mean?
I guess originally I had thought that these souls that arose up, which essentially, from what I understand of the way that Sormo or Nil or Nether explained it, is that these were spirits of the land, which I don't think are necessarily. I feel like they're a little bit different than, I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, I kept when you asked this question, I kept going back to the ship with the severed heads. Like, their souls were never released to Hood either. And I'm wondering if this punishment was bestowed upon Tisti or by the Tisti Udur. But then you brought up before we even started recording that it seemed to be they were killed because of kind of like a civil war between clans, or a war between clans. So I'm like, okay, well maybe it's not the Tisti Udur then, but then what's holding these spirits from, or their souls from being released to Hood? I can't be wrong in assuming that there has to be some type of sorcery or magic here, right?
I think there's some sort of magic, but I almost feel like it's something we're probably not going to see an answer to.
Not right away, but I mean, I guess it's unfair for me to assume that it's only the Tisti Udur that can hold souls from Hood's Gate. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely got to be some repercussions, but then again, like from Duiker's perspective, why is he so worried about it? I mean, it makes it sound like these guys are dead or have been dead for centuries, and so is it just like Hood forgot that he never got these, and now he's reminded, oh yeah, I should have gotten these like 20,000 years ago. Is it that type of thing?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I guess we'll find out what the repercussions are, but I definitely feel like this has something to do with the spirits of the land, right? We kind of keep getting this like ominous overtone about like the past coming back to fight the current battle or whatever. Like I just can't help but think that because the Warrens are so bogged down with like Soul Taken and Divers, that essentially it's going to be the history of the land brought up on both sides to fight against each other.
I guess we will have to read and find out, won't we? That's the first time we brought that up this episode.
Right. Yeah, that is true.
We made it quite a ways.
We did. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess we'll have to just read and find out.
Yeah. Another bit I couldn't really make sense of where it was, again, it's talking about this fracture within this clan that's rising, and Duiker thought it was Jaghut or Fork Rule of Sail or whoever, somebody else, but we find out it was just, infighting. But Nil says, it's kin. This had been mirrored among the Wick a generation ago, mirrored. Like, I don't know what the hell that means. And it just bothered me. I'm like, I didn't get it.
Well, I think that in your next sentence, it explains that. So this sentence is talking about the spirits, and what I imagine they're kind of going through like Duiker, Nil, and List are like witnessing what I would call like a death echo, where these spirits are like reliving their deaths. It is that maybe how am I interpreting that wrong? Did you get that sense too? That they were witnessing how they died?
Dude, that's a fucking awesome term. A death echo. That's awesome. Yeah, that's what I got out of it. Yeah, they're fucking stabbing their kids. Like, ew, Jesus.
So basically, from what I understand about the spirits, is that we have spirits or skeletons kind of like help distract the apocalypse army, and then we also have like another set of spirits like reliving their deaths, right? Like, am I reading into that too much?
I don't think so.
Okay, you would say that that's right?
I would agree with that.
Okay, all right. So I think that what's happening is that the death echoes, right? They're witnessing their deaths essentially, and I think what Nil is saying is that the Wiccans experienced a similar conflict between clans, and that's what he's saying by this has been mirrored among the Wick, is that they had conflict between themselves, and it wasn't until the Emperor Kellenved came and united them. So that is why they have loyalty to the Emperor.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. When I first read it, and granted, I've read the chapter twice now, on top of summaring and talking about it. This section was probably the most confusing for me, not just because of like the geographical thing, but I didn't understand what was happening with these spirits too. Like, I got that they were they were awakened, they were risen, but it didn't, I just felt like it came about so suddenly. But I think it was just because the first time I read it, I was reading it while I was waiting for my tires to get changed. And I don't know if I just had all of my focus, all of my senses into the book. But the second time reading it made it much more sense.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
I really,
yeah.
it was, man, it was intense. That's about all I can say. I didn't have any other points there on that section.
Yeah, I feel like, again, we could probably have our own episode on things that we picked out from this section. But yeah, it was just great. It was epic. Probably one of the best battle scenes I've ever read. And we're only halfway through the book. So yeah, it was great.
Definitely.
I guess I'm good to wait, or good to move on if you want to.
Absolutely.
Beltane did not allow his army to rest as the daylight faded. New fortifications were raised and old ones rebuilt. The refugees were laid out to a plain west of the ford, with wide avenues between the tents for wagons and wounded to rest. The livestock had been driven south to graze. In Coltane's tent, he held a debriefing. Duiker sat listening while List stood over his shoulder. Lull had lost half of his men, and the auxiliaries had fared even worse. The Weasel clan had been mauled during the withdrawal. A shortage of horses was their main concern. From the 7th's captains, Chened and Somar reported an endless list of those that had fallen. The defensive line was under pressure. Before Baria, Satral, and the Red Blades arrived, they rode with valor, enough to earn a comment from Coltane. Sormo reported that he had lost 2 of his warlock children in the battle with the Semp wizard priests. Both Nil and Nether survived. Sormo explains that the Semp, I don't even know, I feel like I'm butchering that. Semp ascendance is vicious and uses the wizards to channel his rage. And for those that cannot handle that power are disintegrated. Law makes a comment about that cutting the Semp's numbers down. Sarmal, without even missing a beat, explains that the Ascendant just chooses more, and more extreme measures must be taken. Everyone else was silent, until Chened asked what everyone else was thinking. What does that mean? The Warlock nods at Bolt, and Bolt explains that Kamis Rouleau is heading north to the city of Sakala, where he'll cross a bridge in the city, a 10, maybe 11-day journey. The Garan and the Semk will stay with them, as they don't need to face them toe-to-toe. Exhaustion will catch up with us sooner or later. Bolt explains that Coltane promised a day of rest tomorrow. Duker asks if they were still headed from Ubard. No one responded. Noticing the faces of the commanders in the tent, Duiker asked if the city had fallen. Lull explained that a dying Tisani told them this. Nether had said that he spoke the truth. The Malazan have fled Umbard and traveled their way northeast. Chened makes a comment about more nobles. The historian exclaims that this is impossible, and if we cannot go to Ubard, what other city is there? Bolt answers his question by telling the historian that they would go to Aaron. Duiker explains that this was madness. Aaron was 200 leagues and then some. Would Pormqual march to meet them? Duiker fires off more questions about marching to Aaron. All Bolt could do was shrug in response. Lull changes subjects to the sappers and how he saw them crying that their 55 cussers were gone and they were only left with a crate of burners. Coltane finally speaks, saying that they all did well. Bolt agreed and said that he wished he could have seen the road blown up. Duiker tells them that victory tastes better when you don't have to witness such horrifying images. So, a nice little cute short section here, kind of getting like a report on the aftermath of the previous section, which I think was a nice way to kind of bring that back home. In the meantime, they're good, they're solid, they have time to make their next move, so to speak.
Yeah, it's still, though, I mean, you hear how many people they lost, and it just makes it feel almost more hopeless to me. Like, yeah, they're fine at the moment, but what's going to happen tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I thought what was really interesting to me as I was reading this, and it's just when I give it that thought, the whole Warlock children thing. I mean, I guess I didn't really know how I felt about it at first, but now I'm kind of getting a sense of them in action. Like going back to the part in the book where they're explaining about the crows taking the souls from the pikes and putting them into children. It didn't really dawn on me. Like I understood what was happening, but it's just like these are children's bodies that are annihilating forces. Like, can you imagine this? Like just these small little bodies just causing so much destruction. And it's just funny that I never really like put it into use before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
Just think it's a cool concept, I guess.
It's definitely a different take because it's not too often you see. I don't feel like you see too often, kids playing a integral role in a battle.
All right. And, inside, these are elders who have lived for generations. They're just physically in a small body.
Yeah.
So it's just the level of intricacies with that. It's just, this is really cool. I'm just really jazzed about it. It's just such a unique concept to me.
Hey, man, it's floating your boat. It's all good.
Right. The only other thing that I had was I just thought it was interesting that when they're all kind of talking about a lot of this stuff, Coltane is really quiet. And I've noticed this before, like this seems to be like a characteristic trait, is that he seems to let Bolt, his uncle, talk on his behalf quite a bit. And I'm wondering if this is like a poker tell, when he's silent, is he like secretly not agreeing to what's being said? Because I feel like when he is talking, this is when he's like in agreement with something, but when he's silent, is that him disagreeing? I don't know if you've ever picked up on that before, but it's one of those things where he just like he lets others do a lot of talking for him. And I just don't know how to make any sense of that.
I guess I kind of thought he was planning. I mean, he's always got to be planning, so I just got the sense that he's just like thinking and plotting their next move and what's coming next.
Got it. Okay. I like that too. But yeah,
maybe that's not it, but that's kind of what
you think it's just kind of like zoning out, like deep in
well,
thought.
sure. Yeah, he's deep in thought. He's probably, just as exhausted as everybody else.
True.
Trying to just take a moment to gather himself. I don't know. I don't know. That's what I got, I guess.
No, fair enough. I think both situations work. Yours probably more realistically, now that I'm thinking about it. But it was just something that I noticed, and I'm like, I wonder what that is, So, yeah.
I mean, not that he couldn't be, thinking these guys are idiots or something. That's just not the way I personally took it.
No, that's totally fine. Cool. Well, I don't have anything else for this really small section. It was just kind of like a reestablishing to me, kind of bringing everything back in, and we're, we as the readers are kind of getting a summary as to what happened. But yeah.
All right. Ready to move on?
Yeah, I am.
This section was not as long, but it was still something. So, section 4. Nether woke up Duiker after a couple-hour nap. She told him that Coltane commanded that he accompany her. He asks what has happened, and Nether replies that nothing has happened yet. He is here to be a witness, and they need to hurry because there isn't much time. In the camp, he could hear the cries of wounded and the dying, also the cries of those grieving lost ones. He asked Nether why the Wiccans don't mourn their dead. She said Coltane forbids it. Duiker asked why, and she said he would have to ask Coltane. Coltane commands, they obey. They have not mourned since the beginning of this journey. At the edge of camp, Nether led Duiker to two figures. It was Sormo and Nil, and Duiker asked if they were all that remained. He had heard they only lost 2 in the battle. Sormo said the others were resting, and they were the strongest, that's why they were here. He said, Duiker, whose eyes met mine across the whirlwind ghosts in the traitor camp, listen to my words. You will hear the fear, every solemn chime. You are no stranger to the dark chorus. Know, then, that this night I have no doubts. Duiker asked what was happening in answer. Sormo raised his hands. Their surroundings changed, his feet were wet, and when he looked down, there was ice covering mud puddles. A cold blast of wind made him turn around. He stepped back in terror. Blood-smeared ice formed a cliff in front of him only a few feet away. The cliff climbed into the sky and was lost to the mist that sat in the sky. Looking at the ice, he could see it was full of bodies, twisted and contorted flesh. Organs and entrails pooled at the bottom, creating a bloody lake. Sormo spoke and said he was within it, but close. Duiker asked who. Sormo said the Semk god, an ascendant from long ago. He was unable to challenge the sorcery and was devoured with the others, yet did not die. He asked Duiker if he could feel his anger. Duiker said he was beyond feeling and wanted to know what sorcery accomplished this. He was told it was Jaghut. To stop invading humans, they raised ice, sometimes quickly, and sometimes it was slow. In some places, it swallowed entire continents, destroying everything that stood. Forkrul assailed civilizations, the creations of Kachane, Shamal, and the huts of those who would one day inherit the world. The highest of Amtos Felak. These rituals never die. They rise and subside and rise again. Even now, one is born in distant lands, and the rivers of ice fill Sormo's dreams. They are destined to create vast upheaval and death in numbers unimaginable. Looters of tombs find riches, but those who search for power look for ice. Nether spoke and said they were assembling. Sormo said it was the spirits of the land. Nil, seemingly anxious, said, the flesh of an ascendant holds much power. They all hunger for a peace. With this gift we bring them. Further service is bound. Sormo asked Duiker how thin this slice of mercy was. All this anger put to an end. Torn apart and consumed. Not death, but a kind of dissipation. Duiker asked about the Semk wizard priests. Sormo winced and said, knowledge, and with it, great pain. We must carve the heart from the Semk. Yet that heart is worse than stone. How it uses mortal flesh. Coltane commands. Duiker finished, you obey. Sormo only nodded, and Duiker told him he had heard his doubts. Sormo looked almost relieved and told Duiker to cover his eyes. Things were about to get messy. Behind Duiker, the ice erupted, gore raining down. The spirits rushed past. Duiker turned in time to see a figure with flesh that was rotted black and arms like an ape clawing its way out of the slushy mixture. The spirits overwhelmed it, though it was able to unleash one hellish shriek before it was tore apart.
Oh yeah, dude.
That's just like a straight up fucking horror novel there.
I know, right? But the vision, the vision you get from the way that it's described is just so beautiful, you know?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. Yeah, you just imagine some like bloody ice mountain just raising up.
With a bunch of, disassembled bodies. No, I'm good.
I mean, it seems like something you would draw.
Oh, totally. I wouldn't want to be a part of that though.
That's fair. That's fair.
Or if I ever like ran into that in real life, I'm like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
Bye.
I'm gonna go to bed and wake up, try again tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of comments from this section, but it talks about the huts of those who would one day inherit the world. Can you think of who that would be? I'm not sure who that was referring to.
I think isn't that just referring to humans?
I thought the Forkrul Assail were like humans, or am I not remembering that right?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, obviously we haven't really met them yet.
Right.
But I mean, it's not the first time they've been mentioned, but
right. I know that they're like one of the founding 3 races, right? Yeah. I guess at the end of the day, I'm not sure who that is referring to either. So yeah.
Well, maybe a listener can fill us in there. The other thing I had on this was this quote about the flesh of an ascendant holding power, and they all hunger for peace. And basically it's a gift that's given to them, so further service is bound. So like I was reading that and I was like, are they doing this, and then are they going to control? Like, are they going to like be an ally, in this fight, in their as they flee?
Oh, like the spirits of the land?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like and again, like this isn't like explicitly laid out. This is, I think like we're reading between the lines a little bit, but I think that my interpretation of what is being said is that Nether is essentially going to release the spirits of the land, and he promises them flesh of an ascendant because it holds power, right? What happens to that power? I don't know if like it's like the mummy where once they consume some of this power, like a little bit more piece of them is restored. I don't know. But that's just kind of where I'm going with it right now. So in return for allowing it's killing two birds with one stone, right? Like the spirits get a taste of power flesh, right? And this ascendant is not killed but dissipated,
Like it's not a threat anymore.
Right, yeah. Also, it doesn't sound like this ascendant was very nice anyway, because it basically had a lot of power and was using the Semp like priests using it to like channel it. So yeah.
Gotcha. I'm glad we agree there.
Yeah, it was this when I first read it kind of took me by surprise too. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? It just at first it felt like it was all over the place, but now reading it a second time kind of clarified that for me.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting like departure from what we had read previously in this chapter.
Right. And I think just like on top of the main battle in a couple of sections ago, I think that, on top of kind of collecting yourselves and maybe taking care of loose ends, which I think this kind of is what that feels like, to just kind of settle down and regroup so that we can move on to the next journey, or the next part of this journey is what I'm gathering. That's just kind of like the sense that I'm getting from here. But I don't know, I guess really cool imagery, but the things that we do have to talk about, we can't really answer because we don't have enough info. And there's really not too much else, I guess, is my opinion.
Well, I guess you wrap that up nicely. Should we just have you take it away here on your last section? Anything else you want to add there?
No, not at all. I mean, again, I feel guilty that we're not talking about it more, but I guess I like yourself, I can't find any explanations for some of the things that were said in here. So, oh yeah, actually, now that I'm going back through it, do you feel like this is maybe referring to the next book at all, or even what happened in the last book?
I don't know if just like I wonder about the title of the next book and like what we're going to see there, but I don't know what kind of thoughts I had about it, but it definitely made me think of the next book. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Hang on, I gotta look for this because you wrote it. Oh, okay. So, when they're explaining about like a little bit after the huts of those that they would one day inherit the world, it sounds like Sormo is explaining even now one is born in a distant land and the rivers of ice fill Sormo's dreams. Is this potential that this is Rayist? But even now one is born, or it's not Rayist, but it's the Azath house that was in Jerujistan, because that was essentially born, right? It was younger, according to the Tistiande that were debating about destroying it. Do you remember that?
I thought we knew for sure that this book was like after everything that took place in Gardens.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. But I mean, I think born is a relative term in this case. I don't think that they mean it like literally. I think that they just mean that like one is newer in a distant land and the river of ice fills Sormo's dreams. This could also mean that like, maybe this has something to do with the Panian Seer, over on Genebacus, but I feel like it is definitely a reference to Genebacus. I feel like the distant land is referring to Genebacus. What is being born? I don't know. When I think born, I think, fairly young, just been born, within a year or two, etc. Sure. So that's kind of where my headcanon's going.
Well, we'll keep reading. We'll find out.
Yeah. All right. Guy is a little shorty. Last section here. Duiker and the three Wiccans returned to the encampment just prior to dawn. They were covered in blood and torn pieces of flesh. The encampment was already awakening. Wagon-mounted forges were stoked, hides were being stretched, and normal activities were being carried out. Their reappearance was enough to announce their success. A fitting dirge to announce the fallen god. Duiker slowed his walk. Someone called for him, and he looked up to see the three figures approaching him. Duiker suggests another time, as he was exhausted. The nobles beg for Duiker to speak with them. They were the nobles from the other night, with a third man he didn't recognize. Nethapar and Tumlet introduced him as Highborn Lanestro. They explain that Coltane's indifference has left them ignored, and they assert that their petition will be delivered. Lanestro goes on a rant, ending with saying that when the Empress hears of this horror, she'll regret the mercy she gave Coltane and the Wiccans. Duiker asks what horror he was talking about. Nethpara cut off and opted to answer this. He tells the historian that Coltane conscripted their servants. Duiker inquires that their concerns is for their servants' well-being. The nobles go on to whine and complain that there isn't anyone there to make their meals and heat their water and raise their tents, etc. Duiker tells them that he'll bring it up to Coltane. He walked on as the nobles argued about not being done with their conversation. He desired to wash himself as he was attracting attention wandering down the aisles between tents. The morning light starting to bleed into the sky. And Das Ende.
I don't think he gave a fuck about these nobles.
No, not at all. And you summarized this section perfectly very early on in the episode. So I just the nobles, that I got really annoyed with them in this chapter. I was just like, what the fuck? Stop bitching.
Maybe they'll find some sliding beds for them later.
Wouldn't that be just?
Yeah, fuckers.
Yeah, assholes. But yeah, dude, I thought it was a nice way to end the chapter. It wasn't busy, there's still some things to take away, but it's almost kind of like things are escalating at the beginning and then they slowly rise and then they like de-escalate a little bit. So I definitely feel like things are just being set up to move to the next sub-book, essentially. So it's kind of a nice way to wrap things up. I don't feel like I've missed anything. I don't feel like I'm left wanting for more. And I even felt that way when I read it the first time. So I think it was just it's a nice, easy way to end the chapter and thus the sub-book, The Whirlwind.
Yeah, it did wrap up pretty nice. I mean, it was a pretty high, and now it's slowing down a little bit. It's not like going low, but it's leveling off a little bit here.
Right.
We'll have to see where things go from here, but I am excited to get into the next sub book here. I want to see what happens with Fellison and that crew, and see what happens with Coltane here now that Duiker's reunited with him, and I wonder where that's going to go. Who else do we have? I want to see Kalam. I want to see Crocus and Absalar,
Fiddler, Mappo,
Fiddler,
and Acarium, because it kind of sounds like they're all going to try to seek out Tremolor. So what adventure awaits there?
So we still have I feel like we got we're about half-ish way through the book, but there's still a lot I feel like a lot that will happen and a lot of things that need to wrap up.
Sure. So I don't know if I dreamt this, but I remember thinking, probably as I was waking up this morning, I was thinking about the whole Soul Taken and D'Ivers like taking up every Warren. And I almost wondered if that was strategic. Like, is that something that Shadow Throne like had a hand in, so that it would force people to use or think outside of the box like Sormo here?
I don't know. It could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that was a thought. It just, for some reason, it just kind of feels like the Warrens are intentionally taken up. It just seemed like a calculated measure.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought on that at all, but now you got me thinking about it.
Yeah. Where that goes, fucking no one knows. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool. Well, yeah, dude. Another amazing episode. It was good to get back into it.
Definitely. The next episode that you will hear after this one will be our live stream, unless that falls through the floor for some reason. But I think, well, Lee's going to be there. I think Maura is going to be there if we can shift the time a little bit. But it'll be great to talk to those two again. So definitely check out our friends at Smiley's podcast. They're not they're rereaders. They're not reading for the first time. So I've not because I've wanted to, but I've avoided listening to them just because I didn't want to stumble across something. And I know some of their stuff they have, times where they point out spoilers, but I'm the type of person, if I'm going to start listening, I want to listen all the way through. So it's just, for me, it's a little bit easier just to not listen till we're at the point where I can just get through the whole thing.
Right. And also, as I'm thinking about it, the wrap up, if we live the wrap up, that's going to happen before these episodes are even published.
Well, I guess that's true.
Huh.
Well,
We'll have to talk about that one.
Fuck it.
There we go. But yeah, well, I was thinking of some issues we might run across, so I think that we should definitely test it out sometime this week.
Sure, we can do that.
But yeah, I guess outside of that, fucking fantastic episode. Great summary, sir.
You as well.
Thanks, dude. Well, I will talk to you later.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday here and take care.
You do the same, man.
Will do.
All right, bye.
Bye.